Transition from going to trust falls and introductions to copyright is we wanted you to feel comfortable with us and with each other, and now we want you to feel comfortable with using resources in a way that for your teaching and for your students to use resources in their learning. So that's the transition we're making. And one of our site fellows,
Priya Dunlap, who works in the chemistry department. She teaches, I think, where's she using the buzzers at? Chem 104?
3 or 4.
3 or 4, I think. And she's been using these buzzers to help students study for their tests. So she gives them, things that they need to study for. And so rather than just going over what's on the study sheet, she quizzes them on what's on the study sheet. And I guess the first time that she tried it, the students were a little hesitant, I think. It was a little slow going. The students were not necessarily excited or invested in the game. But then the next time they played, she said she really got a response out of them. They knew the game was coming, and so they prepared for the game because they didn't want to lose. And so they were studying a little bit more than they normally would have. So if you decide to try this for your course, be prepared the first time. They might not know what the heck is going on, but by the second time, they just might be having fun trying to answer the questions that you're putting to them.
And course scores.
And yeah, that was the really great thing. I mean, obviously, her test scores started going up. The students' test scores were going up. So there was obviously a direct benefit to the students to play this game because they were studying a little bit more.
She actually said that she was giving harder tests now because they were so prepared that they ended it.
Yay! Has that ever happened to anybody just naturally where your students needed harder tests because they were so prepared? It doesn't happen very often, so I don't know. Might be a good thing to try. Yay! Where'd Heidi go? She walked out. She's done. I might as well tell you guys, Kriya is a Site Fellow. I don't know, have you guys all heard of Site Fellows? It's the Chancellor's Innovation in Technology and E-Learning program. And last year was our pilot year, and we invited 8 faculty members to work very, very closely with us in coming up with some new thing to try. And that was why Priya was engaging these, and she was actually doing a number of other things in her course, such as creating augmented reality activities for her students, and that sort of thing. So each of the Site Fellows is trying new stuff that maybe people have never tried before, or certainly have never tried on this campus before, and we try to support them as much as we possibly can in developing and deploying the idea. And then we also try to help them find audiences to talk about their projects so that they're up in front of people or they're publishing about the project so that whatever they learn from the project is shared with lots of people. So it was a really successful pilot year, and so we've invited, or we've had a large chunk of nominees just this last week, faculty who were nominated to become Site Fellows, and the 8 for this year.
a student uses copyrighted images downloaded from the web using correct citation. The report is submitted to a school competition and wins a financial prize for the department. This is covered under fair use.
Wrong slide.
Wrong slide.
So it uses copyrighted images using correct citation. There's a school competition in which he gets some money for the.
It's true.
More true.
But that was a screen.
Sorry.
More true than false. So, depending on the amount of substantiability, then it's probably fine. And the money to the department is not. It doesn't matter. It's not pertinent to.
Can they really benefit? It says more true than false, but with that financial reward,
It's
with
not
that.
taking money away from the person who created the piece, though. It's not as if that person would have got the money.
Right. That's
These have to do with diminishing the creative work, the value of the creative work.
Okay.
Yeah. In a report for class, I just did that one. Sorry. Okay. The teacher for the above student goes to a conference and shows the report in a conference setting. As a presenter, the conference registration fee for the teacher is waived. This is a clear violation of fair use.
Oh, that's false.
Yeah, more false than true. Students create a video of a campus event and use well-known popular music clips. They sell the videos to students with the money going back into the group for other media projects. The songs are listed in the credits. This is covered under fair use. Yes.
We think that's more false than true.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear what your thought process is behind
Well,
that.
I was thinking that actually does take away from the original creator, so that seems to go against some of the things Chris said in his presentation, that if you compete with the original creator, then you are not covered under fair use, and you're no longer covered under the educational provisions either.
It's a commercial use.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know if they're using it in whole, are they just playing the whole song behind, or they take, so it's again, it's a sliding scale, but yeah, definitely looks a little hinky at that point.
Now this one is, it's not a true and false, it's more like a short answer question. 1923. Who's got it? Yeah.
That's the year including and prior to which everything's fair game.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
That was a well-constructed sentence.
Good work.
I have actually a question based on that. Does that year change every year? Like, is it based on the number of years back, or is it set 1920?
Is that a law that passes?
It's set in the law when the Copyright Act was passed, so that date doesn't change. What does change are now, since their lengths of terms, for instance, James Joyce just came into the public domain in a number of cases, except for some of his letters because of the sliding year duration. But prior to 23 or after stays fixed.
One of the links that Chris posted on his presentation was the slider, and copyright plus 70 years after the author's death, depending on when it was copyrighted, so there's a whole slider. That's a really useful link to use if something does have a copyright and you're curious about it. This one's a little harder. Name 2 of the 4 factors of fair use. Yep.
Parody and whether like a critique or parody or news.
Okay, that's not.
Are you gonna give me the awful sound?
No, I'm gonna hit wrong, but don't, it's not that wrong.
Is it more right than wrong?
A little more wrong than right.
Oh, I didn't understand the question. Clearly.
Yeah, so it's the purpose and nature, education. The nature is the creative versus factual, the amount and substantiability. How many people have always thought, well, I can use 20% of the book or 10% of a audio recording? That's not true at all. Because if the 10% is the heart of the work, then that could be considered a violation. Okay. This one also is harder too. What is a supplement to copyright? It's not necessarily an alternative, but it's something as an educated you might be looking for or having your students look for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, creative commons.
Oh, yep. That's right. Creative Commons. And that was briefly mentioned in Chris's presentation and will be further expounded upon by Brooke after lunch. Okay. We now go into our scenario portion of the game show. Do we have enough? Do we have 12 games left?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is double points. Oh, and you take some of your.
Memorize your lines?
Yeah, but it's not.
I got the stage direction. I look at the audience.
That's okay.
Scenario 1.
Hey Dallas, what you doing?
Oh, I found these great PowerPoint presentations that come with the required textbook from the publishers, and I'm putting them on Blackboard to help the students as a learning guide.
Wow, can she do that? Why or why not?
Yes, she can, because it's educational, it's a password protected site.
More of the fair use options are in your favor than not. Excellent. Scenario 2.
Dan, I see you are working on your class project. Where are you getting those images?
Well, Professor Brooke, I'm pulling them off the internet where anything you can find is fair game.
Can he do that? Why or why not?
No, because the images are copyrighted. But it depends on.
She brought her partner in.
Yeah. So it's one of those maybes, you know, you don't really have all the
Knowledge is
details.
common.
If it's an open or closed site, that might play a big role in how valid it is. Excellent.
Three?
Number 3.
So, Brooke, I've got this great course I'm working on. It's on WordPress and open to the world. I'm working on a module called Conflicting Demands of Duty and Love, and I found this great segment from Game of Thrones. I found it online at projectfreetv.com.
Can he embed that in an open course? Why or why not?
Game of Thrones, embedding.
Yeah.
Can? Is that what you think?
Maybe.
I'm not answering. I think you can because there's a very specific educational purpose that is going to be discussed around the embedding of that. It's not the whole thing. And it's closed, right?
It's
Where
not
does it
as
go?
open.
It's
It's
WordPress.
Posting in the open.
Okay. So that makes it iffy, but I still think you can do it.
So the key there is embed. So you're linking out to something that's already online. So that would be more yes than. So excellent.
Although I would suggest never embedding anything from Project Free TV. That thing is so, like, it's a million pop-ups, and just use YouTube or Vimeo. Don't use Project Free TV.
Number 4.
I just got this letter from the author of some factual material that I provide on my open class website. He's telling me that he'll sue me if I don't take it down immediately.
Isn't it your right to use it?
I thought so, but he says he owns the copyright and now he wants to be paid for it.
What should Dan do?
Hire a lawyer.
Anybody want to?
It's a bit of a guess, but I think he should post it because in Chris's presentation, he said that nobody's ever been indicted for, no educator has been indicted for posting something on a course website, I believe. And this does seem like it's covered for the educational use.
What about the content too?
Yeah, I guess the amount. How would the content?
It's harder to copyright factual material, like
Oh,
the
right.
number of acres in Idaho, say, isn't really copyrightable.
Right.
And, you know, where is he putting it? Where is he putting it? And also, you know, does that person actually own the copyright, or whoever the publisher might own the copyright? There's still a lot of questions that you might ask or be asked, and Dan can always just take it down. It's his choice, but he has options. And he, like Chris says in his video, you don't have to be bullied, especially as educators. If you feel that you have a reason for fair use, then don't be bullied by the copyright owners.
I think his best effort would be to write back a letter that really sounds like he totally knows what he's talking about. Just sort of scare the other guy.
And Dan would definitely.
And your attorney friend help you with this.
And last one.
Isn't this a great photograph? It would be perfect for your World Lit class. Too bad it has a copyright symbol on it.
Not a problem. I can link to it and then get my students to recreate it to better associate it to the week's lesson.
What provisions under fair use would this fall under?
Get my students to recreate.
Want to hear it again?
Isn't this a great photograph? It would be perfect for your World Lit class, Brooke. Too bad it has a copyright symbol on it.
Not a problem. I can link to it and then get my students to recreate it to better associate it to the week's lesson.
What provisions under fair use would this fall under?
What does recreate mean?
I don't know how you wrote it.
You know.
That's a good discussion point.
Yeah, somebody weighed in.
Yeah, right now, is it all the purpose, character, the nature of the copyright, but the law.
No, she's
No, she's taking notes.
She's good. Affected the potential market.
So the ones I was looking for were using it for education purposes and recreate as in parody.
Oh,
So
okay, sure.
that-
Revise it, you know, in any substantial.
Yeah, so that was maybe not the best word choice, but I didn't want to say parody. So, did you have a question, Sean?
No, sure.
Okay, so we have one last question, or one last scenario.
Ring.
Yo.
Dan.
Yo.
Yeah, it's
You
on.
there?
Yeah. It's on here. I found this great educational film I want to use in my class. I saw it on PBS. I have it on DVD. Can you help me get it in my online class in Blackboard?
I know I can technically do that, but I don't think this is fair use.
Or is it?
Let's discuss this.
Yep, Brian.
You could absolutely take a piece out of it, a segment, you know, some smaller portion of it. To put the whole thing up, you need permission, I would think.
Yep.
That's a factor, for sure. Any other,
But keep going.
any other factors?
Because it would undermine their business potential.
The effect of, most likely, PBS doesn't own the copyright on it, someone else, a producer does, so there might be potential market value.
But you could just link to it, yes?
Yes, right.
Put a link in and then they could just go
He
to
has it on
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it's available online, anytime you link to something, that's fair game.
I think a good question for, you know, and this is what we ask, if you are intentionally finding a way to save your students money, which is always a laudable goal, by putting something in that they then don't have to buy, you've pretty much failed the fourth factor for sure, so you need to think twice about that. And in this case, that's what you're doing. Same thing with textbooks, a couple chapters that they'd have to buy anyway, or that you're one thing, putting the whole book up, man, not so good, even if it's behind, you know, the firewall of Blackboard or something else.
Your argument gets a lot more toward the fair use side if you're putting up a segment and you're critiquing it.
Yeah.
That's something, we talk about parody, but not so much criticism.
I was just curious because in some classes I've seen instructors take pictures of pictures in a textbook without permission from either the publisher, the author, or anything, and I guess I'm a little confused because I don't know about anybody else, but I'm just thinking, would you, if you had permission, should you not put that on, you know, some portion of the picture used by permission or something like this? Because to me, I just think it's, I think it's just taking somebody else's property and utilizing it, maybe for educational purposes, but I just feel a little uneasy about that without getting permission.
Yeah,
Is it a textbook the students have purchased for the course, or?
Sometimes they have, sometimes not.
And remember that the legality and the ethics can be overlapping but distinct things. So you don't, I mean, the point of fair use is you don't have to ask permission because that's what it's built to do and nobody can stop that. But that doesn't mean that you don't always want to attribute images or anything that you use. I think that's wise. And if you want to ask permission, that's great. The one thing about asking permission to keep in mind is once you've done that, you've opened that door. And if there's ever a problem later, they can say, you know, that's going to work against you, even if you have a fair use. So I just think you want to keep that in mind. But certainly attribution all the time is just a good ethical thing to do.
I have a question, like in our department, we have language clubs and we show, you know, full-length movies to the clubs. So where does that fall under copyright law? Because that's what we are doing with foreign language films.
Some of the foreign language films are available as part of archives, either on archive.org or on YouTube. So I'm thinking specifically, I just watched Solaris edition, and it's fully available online. So it may not be the exact movies that you're showing, but there may be alternatives that are available.
So if they're available online on YouTube, then
I think that's the lowest barrier for that.
And I think the emphasis here is on the freedoms that we aren't exercising for the most part, not the infringement, which doesn't happen very much. I mean, the reality is, what drives me is how, I swear every time I go to a conference or I'm somewhere, I will see someone say, I'd show you this picture, but it's under copyright, or I'd share this lyric. And it's like nails on a chalkboard because you're giving away these freedoms. If you don't exercise them, they go away. And people who don't own copyright will bully you, and it's really frustrating because somebody will say, oh, I was told I can't use this. Well, by who? Well, they don't even own the copyright. They can't. There's a poet, so we have poets in the room. You might know of Zukofsky. Zukofsky's son sent out a letter saying, you can't use even a single word of my father's poetry without my permission, which I mean, you guess you can't use the word the or a or anything according to him.
There's
but he
been
can't.
libel over that.
What's that?
There's been libel over that.
Yeah, he can, but that's true. But you know, you can't stop somebody's fair use except you can bully them into it. And so he doesn't have that right, but it has that weird chilling effect. And I'm all for the rights of artists to profit from their work and control their work, and Creative Commons helps with making that more clear, but you can't give it in. Can't give into that. And as educators, we just have a lot of latitude. And our students do too in the educational context, and it's important to educate them about that because students often don't have any idea. Just really want to emphasize the freedom.
Dan?
Sometimes publishers in various forms really are non-thinking bullies, or they have overzealous legal departments. Days after we put the Mars rover on Mars and it did that fantastic, landing, people were blogging about it and they were reposting NASA's animation of the whole landing sequence. And within a day after that, a station in LA issued a takedown notice to YouTube, and so all these blogs, they couldn't link to this film, which was this government public domain animation that happened to also air on their station. And so within 3 days, YouTube, they wiped that complaint out. But that's what some legal departments do. So it's nice when they get overturned and reversed.
That's the other side of asking permission too. You never want to talk to the Intellectual Property Office about your rights for fair use, because the Intellectual Properties Office and legal counsel to universities' sole goal is to protect the university, and they will always say no. They're incredibly risk averse. And once you've asked and been told no, then you really can't get around that because you're fighting your own institution for the rights you should already have. It's a mess. And the other thing to keep in mind is, what's the worst that happens? Brian said, ask forgiveness, right? I mean, so what's the worst that happens? You do something, someone says they're going to take that down informally most of the time, and if they say no, then you get what's called a cease and desist order, and then you can decide if you even care about that, and you can just ignore it until they send some more, until you decide whether you just need to know in your mind, are you doing the right thing? Is it a fair use? And then usually in the educational context, by that time, you can decide, okay, fine, the semester's over, I don't really care anymore, or I'm going to move on and do something else. You just say go for it. that's the point about there not being any successful prosecutions of individual educators, because we really do have a lot of use, and there's not, you know, a lot of sense necessarily in trying to bleed the turnips of education over silly copyright infringement that's really fair use or is edge case. So, you know, do what you need to do as long as you've looked at the 4 factors. It always comes back to that. And if you feel like you've got a good, you know, good ground to stand on, just, you know, move forward with your freedoms that you have.
So we have some prizes, and I believe that Arash and Gail have the most candies. So we know that Gail